Welcome back. Before we begin, I wanted to share how excited I am to be coming off a keynote session at the South Carolina SCAMLE Schools to Watch event and sharing out the language of behavior with educators who are doing incredible work for their students. It was such a meaningful experience to connect with leaders who are committed to growth, reflection, and creating better outcomes for their students as everyone's coming back in just a couple weeks. If you're looking for a speaker for your event, campus kickoff, or district training, head over to joshstamper.com/speaking for more information. I love the opportunity to support your teams with practical strategies, encouragement, and a message that helps educators feel equipped and inspired for the work ahead. I'm also excited to welcome today's guest, Thomas O'Brien. Thomas partners with schools, districts, and after-school programs nationwide to turn data and practice into college and career opportunities. He's an award-winning math teacher and former nationally recognized high school principal, as he brings deep instructional leadership experience and a passion for continuous improvement in education. We're excited to talk about math instruction, school leadership, and about his brand new book called Empowering All Leaders to Be Math Leaders, which is releasing soon. I've had an opportunity to not only read this resource, but endorse it. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. And we're going to dive in and learn more about Thomas, how to break the stigma of not being good at math, and how to support our math educators on the campus and in the district. Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. All right, welcome back to Aspire to Lead. I'm so excited to be here today with a wonderful guest, someone who I've had a chance to read his brand new book, endorsed it, think very highly of this educator, and so excited to have this conversation. So Thomas O'Brien, thank you so much for being on Aspire to Lead.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and I hope to share some insights and wisdom, but also learn from the community as we just kind of continue to engage and connect and learn from each other as we get better for schools.
Yeah, that's what this is all about, right? We can't do this work alone. And so, Thomas, I'd love for you just to share a little bit about yourself. And you have done a lot in education over the years. So will you just share a little bit about your educational leadership journey?
Yeah. So my journey began in rural New Mexico, where I was a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade math teacher all at once, teaching a bunch of different courses to a bunch of great kids. And I loved it. I had a great time becoming a math teacher. And after a few years there, I realized that I wanted to become a school leader. And in order to do that, I had to work at the best school possible. So I happened to move to New York City, where I currently live. And I found a great school called Williamsburg Collegiate Charter School. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the teachers, the intensity, the excitement, and the joy of math. And I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get a job there. And I taught 6th grade math for a long time. It was just a wonderful experience of constantly trying to figure out what each kid needed, what the whole class needed every day at every turn. And I found a lot of joy in that. And after several years as a math teacher, I became a school leader at the middle school level. And then ultimately I ran Uncommon Charter High School in Brooklyn, New York for many years. And that was a fantastic job, and challenging, demanding, exciting, rewarding, all of the things that you could ask for in a role. Through that journey, I was able to cultivate leaders in our school and empower folks, but also really unlock potential for a bunch of kids that are off now. I see them on LinkedIn doing amazing things and having families and achieving so much. And that's just the most rewarding thing there is, right?
Oh, for sure. I was just thinking, man, that's so great that you actually see where they're going and how like the work that you've done with them over the years has flourished in some way. Because, you know, back in the day, you just sent them off and just pray that they do something in the world, and we never knew. So to have that social media connection is pretty fun.
Yeah, funny enough, there's even one former student that I taught in 6th grade, and I was her high school principal, and she like cross commutes when I drop my son off at school, and I see her almost every morning and wave to her as she walks to her job, and I walk to drop my son off at school, and I just get to see her out in the world and living her great life.
Yeah, that's probably where you're like, man, I feel old now.
Very, very true.
I had plenty of moments like that. So let's talk about the world of math, because that's what your book is on, empowering all leaders to be math leaders. I love this title. I love the resource in itself too, because there's kind of a stigma around math, unfortunately. And some people are like, I'm just not a math person. And that's not only students, but I've heard parents say that. As an administrator, I know some administrators, they were kind of like hands off, like I'm not touching that. I'm not going to be the person in charge of that subject. So why do you think over the years it's just been kind of like socially acceptable to have this statement and this stigma just around and everywhere?
Yeah, you've really nailed the key reason why I wanted to write this book was because I'd be at the gym and people would be calculating the weights. I'm like, I'm not a math person. Or, you order coffee and people are kind of looking at the tip and they're like, I'm not a math person. You just hear that phrase so commonly. And like also people say it so comfortably. And the alternative is to say, like, I'm not a reader or I'm not a writer. We would never think that that's an acceptable thing. But somehow we've, as a society, become comfortable with people kind of opting out of quote unquote being math people. And I think that's a real shame. As someone who just loved math as a kid growing up, someone who studied it through college, and then also somebody who spent a lot of time thinking about how to help people be excited about it, it kind of breaks my heart to hear people talk about it in that way. And I think a lot of it just comes from just this mindset that kind of rolls over every generation, where math becomes this intimidating thing in the classroom. Kids get turned off by it at some point, and it's really hard to right that ship. The reason I wrote this book was really to say, like, I see that school leaders are the key lever in changing that culture and that mindset by them themselves stepping in and leading math forward in their leadership and to support their math classrooms. And really for leaders to challenge themselves to say, well, I can be a math person, even if I don't feel it right now. I can turn that corner for myself and thereby inspiring others and students in my school.
We're going to talk about the leadership aspect in just a moment, but I just want to hunker down for a little bit, because as kids coming into your classroom, and you were a middle school teacher for a long time, that's my jam. That's where I was for my entire career. So yeah. I can envision kids coming in, especially early in the year, saying this thing, right? I'm not good at math. I've never been good at math. I'm not a math person, fill in the blank. And as a school teacher, what were some things that you did in the classroom to shift that mindset?
Great question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is starting with the absolute basics that kids are going to need to be successful. So our students came new to the middle school that I worked at, and they came from a bunch of different schools, and they all had various backgrounds. And we didn't just assume that they all knew the sixth grade math or the grade level math. And so we invested heavily in those first few weeks of the school year in going back to the fundamentals and really making sure that everybody had the arithmetic skills to be able to participate in the pre-algebra skills, and thinking, what are the foundational skills that are going to unlock the actual sixth grade math content. And I think that a lot of schools and teachers feel that pressure, right? Like, you have your scope and sequence, you have your state exam that you need to prepare for, and you're in crunch for time. But our school philosophy was to slow down and really make sure that everybody has those fundamentals so that they can walk slowly in the beginning so you could run faster later on. And I think that also solves another thing, which comes across particularly in middle grades and then compounds in later grades, which is to think about a lot of middle schools, kids spend time learning fractions, decimals, percents in sixth grade. Then they learn fractions, decimals, percents in seventh grade, and they do the same thing in eighth grade. And so the idea to slow down and go deeper on content and make sure that students master the conceptual understandings, not live on the superficial algorithm level, really say, like, okay, I know as a student, I know how to add and subtract decimals. So I learned that in sixth grade, so I don't need to relearn that in seventh grade. Instead, I can go farther and deeper in my math career.
All right, so let's make the shift, right? So we have a lot of leaders right now. While we're talking, we have principals and admin coming into the building. They're preparing for the new year. And this has happened to me. I know a lot of people that are listening, this has happened. And if it hasn't, it probably will in your time as a leader, is that you get a shift where you may get math put on you, as far as that is your subject matter. You're over it now. You're the leader of the subject. You now are assessing all of the math teachers. And some folks are like, okay, I wasn't good at math. I wasn't a math teacher. I don't know if I'm confident in doing that. And so what would you say to those folks that are now sitting there going, okay, I have this entire subject that I may not have background toward. Are they done for? Is this something where they're doomed from day one?
Absolutely not. And just like the best sports coaches weren't always the best players, the same thing can be true for leaders coaching outside of their content area, right? If your background is in English and literature and coaching English teachers and teaching English, a lot of the same tools apply. It's just thinking about the different context, right? So what I would say is lean in with humility and try the math. That's like my number one advice, is to step forward, try the math that your teachers are asking your students to do. And you might get it right, you might get it wrong, but either way, you're going to have grappled with it and you're going to have that frontline experience that then can influence your leadership, right? So first thing is just try the problems that students are going to be doing. That could also just reaffirm that you're like, oh, I actually do know how to do this. YouTube clips can get you pretty far in kind of reteaching yourself and bolstering your confidence. The other thing is I feel like leaders often feel like they have to have the right answer. And you don't actually have to have the right answer. You have to have really great questions. And so having some really powerful questions, such as like, what's the key conceptual understanding here? Where are students really going to struggle? How are students going to progress through difficulty levels throughout this lesson? Those are great questions you can ask any math teacher, and they're going to be excited to engage and talk about that and share their perspective. And that's going to get you really far as a leader and help give you insight as you get started in coaching maybe a new teacher or a new department.
I love those. All right, so let's talk about the actual classroom. So, obviously, if that's your subject matter, you're going to be walking in and doing your walkthroughs. You're going to start doing evaluations with the teachers. So if they're new to the subject, as far as being the evaluator, what are some things that they should be looking for in the math classroom?
Yeah, well, I'll actually start with something which is who you could look with, right?
Oh, like it.
So one great strategy that I love, and this is what I did when I was a principal and I started coaching history teachers and English teachers, which wasn't my exact background, was find a subject matter expert that could help level up my coaching. So what I would recommend for any folks who are stepping into these new roles coaching math teachers is find the best math teacher you can, find another math leader, and then co-observe with them. And co-observe by going to the room together, taking your own separate notes, writing down what you see that stands out, that's great, any questions you have, then step out of the room. And then you, as the leader who's trying to level up your leadership, ask the expert, like propose like what you think is a solutions, share your takeaways to the expert and get their feedback on that. That's a really great way to level up your expertise and get kind of coaching on your feedback before you have to get in front of a teacher and share anything with them or write any reports or share any feedback. So one thing is to think about how to use a subject matter expert, which could be within your building or beyond, to level up your coaching. Other specific thing to look for is a lot of schools have specific curriculum or programs that they are trying to execute. Maybe that's a district-wide program. And one of my core recommendations is to spend time trying to attend the professional developments provided by, say, Illustrative Mathematics or some other provider earlier on in the year. Like right now is a great time in the summer. Get familiar with the program and their expectations so that when you step into the math class, you know what you're looking for and you have a little more clarity in the key factors that come from that curriculum or that program.
So as far as the people that you're attached to, you said people on the campus or people outside. So in regards to that, instructional coach might be a good person to partner with?
Yeah. I think everybody has kind of like slightly different names, but yeah, instructional coach is a great person to connect with. And other, I think just experienced teachers on staff like are eager to talk about their content. And I think that can be another key lever if you don't have access to like an instructional coach or someone at like a district or network level, someone within your building that you kind of have trust and excitement to collaborate with.
So as far as instructional coach, like I know we had one on our campus and we had a tough time because it was a new position. It was just kind of, hey, the district has funds. They put it on our campus and then they were trying to insert themselves as far as supporting teachers and as far as a leader having kind of this secondary source. It was kind of unusual. And so I'm curious if you've had an instructional coach on your campus and how you utilize them to uplift your math teachers.
Yeah, great. I think there's a lot of different potential avenues. One is to think through like the key levers of instructional leadership, like what is the professional development that you can provide and then follow up on. And that could be really targeted and you could collaborate in planning with them and say, this is my instructional vision for our school. And this is what our instructional vision is for math classes. And think about like and consider like their perspective on like how can we elevate that in all of our math classes. I think the other one is to think about like what are the walkthroughs and then what are like the daily coaching that teachers might get. And I know different schools have different comfort levels with like real-time coaching or leaders kind of co-teaching in the classroom. And as a leader, I was very mindful of that, but I was excited I had a lot of teachers who were eager to co-teach and float ideas in front of kids. And some teachers aren't as comfortable with that, and you want to respect that and be mindful. But really having clarity on like what's going to drive the change in each of the classrooms, and what do you want to see across all the classrooms, and then where can you get really specific with individual teachers and level up their practice. And that might look different depending on how you approach that coaching.
Yeah, I love those strategies. That's so important. And I think if used correctly, instructional coaches can do wonders on your campus. I know we were a little apprehensive at first because we didn't know what to do with them. However, over the long term, it was extremely beneficial for all of our teachers. So I love what you were talking through in regards to how to utilize that position specifically. I'd love to come back to your book, Thomas, because I think this is such a beautiful resource. So empowering all leaders to be math leaders. You had talked about kind of the why as to why you constructed the book, but I want to know, for our leaders, what are they going to get from the book?
Yeah, this book was written with one particular leader in mind that I had kind of mentored and coached. And she was the type of leader who had a lot of great questions, was really going to go and tackle all the challenges, but kind of wanted a roadmap for where she should go and what steps she should take. And so I wrote this book with her and other emerging leaders in mind who are stepping into a role of coaching math teachers that they aren't necessarily confident or familiar with, but they have a lot of the tools that they need. So how the book is designed is each chapter is meant to build upon itself. So like we start with like curriculum and the planning and high quality instructional materials and standards alignment. And then from there, we build upon the brain science to say, like, how do we make sure that what we've taught in the class is sticky for kids and they retain that information? And then it kind of goes on to layer on different parts of leadership that's going to help a leader bring to life their vision for their math classes. So it includes hiring strategies. It includes when and how to integrate technology, how to integrate like a school-wide theme or culture, for example, around like financial literacy and stuff like that. But the idea is that each chapter builds upon itself, while also within each chapter, very tactical design for how a leader can like sit down, read one chapter and say, okay, I'm going to implement this tomorrow in my school. And so it starts with a little vignette, then some solutions, and then it has a bunch of tools and resources and reflection questions to help leaders process that information and say, okay, how can I get ready for Monday, influence the instruction in my school?
Thomas, can I hunger down on the chapter of hiring math teachers just because of where we land in the calendar? Because
yes.
I was just speaking and I was talking to an administrator there, and they were saying they had 76 openings in their district right now, and they are back on campus. Their teachers come back in 2 weeks, and they're sweating it, obviously. And so trying to find quality folks, that's maybe a different conversation. But in regards to your chapters for hiring math teachers, what are some things that our administrators can maybe implement to help that process?
I love managing the hiring process because it means you're finding the right people to be on the bus to spend hours and hours with your students in your school. And so it's really important. And it's one of those things that the school leader has outsized impact on and influence on. We want to make sure that system is effective and works for everybody. Some ideas. Math specific, I would say that if you are not administering a content specific assessment at your campus to assess the content knowledge of your teachers, that's a missed opportunity. In the book, I tell a pretty rough story of hiring someone that turns out they did not have the content expertise to teach the class. And lo and behold, I spent the rest of the year teaching calculus. So that is the risk that you run without using a resource like a content task. The other one is to, I think, cast a wide net and think about who might be a really good candidate to be a great teacher at your school, and think outside the box and do further and further outreach and find people who are hungry, excited, and eager to like join an inspiring team. And then you think about how do you shape them into math teachers, right? And that's to say, like, are they math curious? Do they get excited to talk about math with kids? Are they good at explaining things? Because I think if someone has that natural inclination to say, I want to break something down and explain it in its parts and make sure that students are making sense of it, then even if their content knowledge is, maybe not ready for calculus, they could be a great algebra teacher. And so just thinking through where people can fit in the right place. And the middle part that's really hard is there's only so many people in the country that know the math at the level we need them to. There's only this many people who are ready to and eager to teach it. And it gets smaller and smaller the more selected that course gets. So it gets really hard to hire for some of those
it's like
rigorous,
a niche
like courses. Yes.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the challenges. I would say one thing that I found to be really seal the deal for a lot of candidates when they came to visit my campus was I had a group of kids called the Saber Ambassadors. We were the Sabers, and they gave tours to our campus, and they helped me run assemblies and stuff. But they were just a group of kids who would tour candidates around the school and just show them the things that they thought were interesting. And sometimes the kid would take them to the gym, sometimes they take them to the art room, sometimes they take them to specific classes. And far and away, whenever I sat for the final interview with the teacher, they always said that the tour was the highlight. And so I think the more you can try to think about getting students involved in your hiring process to showcase your school, that's why teachers show up to work, is to spend time with kids, and it gives them a really great sense of the type of kid that they're going to get to spend time with every day.
I loved integrating students into all different things. I mean, the hiring process, yes, but then also even like our teacher groups that we had, or having them at every event, with parents and helping out and just being kind of the face of the franchise, if you will. So they need to have ownership, and they need to also be able to speak into who their teacher is going to be, or, the direction that our campus is going, because they're the ones that it's going to affect. So why wouldn't we ask them either to lead in some way or to share their opinion on what's going on? So I love that component of it specifically, but all of it was wonderful. And I hope people are taking notes and making sure that they're implementing these things specific for their math teachers. But honestly, a lot of things that you were talking about are just good practice in general, just for any subject. So this is an important time right now as people are scrambling to fill those positions at the beginning of the year. So is there anything else that you want to talk through, Thomas, as far as your book, before we jump into another resource that you send out weekly?
I would just say, like, the book is designed to help folks be ready the next day or the next week to accomplish great things. And I think of like two parts of the school week that's really important is being Monday ready and having a plan for how you're going to attack the week. And that might change. Like, we all know that disruptions come up and we have to course correct. But the other thing I think about a lot is Friday intensity and walking around your school building, seventh period, last period of the day on Friday afternoon. What is the culture? What are students spending time on? How are teachers teaching? And thinking about how do you connect those two things? The plan you have going in Monday, and how does that execute lead into a great Friday afternoon where kids are learning all the way to the final bell. And so hopefully when folks read the book, they have a roadmap for how to build that in their math classes. And I'm excited to just continue to partner with folks in building great math classes.
So how on earth did you rope in TJ Vari to do the foreword of the book?
Well, actually, TJ's been a mentor of mine, and we've been kind of co-writing and sharing ideas. And he's always like, "Hey, you should put together an idea for a book. Think about it, consider it." And I thought about it, and then one night I just had like kind of this inspiration, and he kind of got me started on this. And a lot of our conversations were what you and I were talking about earlier, which is just like all these people walking around identifying as not math people. And that's really been sticky for us as we think about college and career readiness and making sure that kids are empowered to head out in the world and, tackle their dreams. And so he and I had kicked around these ideas for a long time, and the book was coming together, and he just felt like the right person because he speaks with the same passion that I do about making sure that school leaders are leading their math classrooms with the same intentionality that they do all the other disciplines.
Yeah, TJ's a dear friend of the podcast. I had the privilege of doing a podcast with him with the Vibe EDU podcast. So I'm giving him a bad time, but TJ is an amazing person. Can't wait to see him in a couple of weeks at our Vibe EDU event in Anaheim, California. And I'm so happy that he was able to do the foreword for this wonderful book. So Empowering All Leaders to Be Math Leaders. There's a link in the show notes. So I want you to click on that, grab it, have that as a resource roadmap for the beginning of the school year, because I know it's going to make your campus better. And with that, I want to talk about the second piece here that's really important, is that you have a resource that comes out every week, which is How Math Saves the World. And that's on Substack. So will you just share out what that is all about and why you created that?
Yeah, thanks for raising that. So a lot of my thoughts, are like the inspiration for this book, was that there's misconceptions, misunderstandings of math that you see all around us, right? Like magnitude is a really good example. The difference between millions and billions and now trillions is like in the news, and people are talking about it, and percents, and how people are interpreting numbers within the world and making really important decisions for their lives. That kind of started as a genesis for this, but then I got more and more thinking about what is the root cause of that? And that's classrooms, right? And making sure that kids have really great classrooms to walk into every day where they're excited and they're learning and they're gaining the skills they need to navigate the world beyond. So this Substack is kind of my ongoing thoughts, reflections, insights about math, instruction, and school leadership, all kind of compiled into one. And so it's where I share observations when I visit a school, or insights from kind of, research that's happening, or just different reflections from my own experience in schools. And so it's kind of like that one-stop shop for all the things that are rattling around in my head. It's been a really great place to share ideas and then also get feedback from folks, right? I published a piece recently and it had 6 parts. Several people commented about one particular one, which is like the invisible student that exists in our class, right? The student that kind of does the work looks nice, it presents well, they kind of fly under the radar intentionally, but then you get to the end of the year and they have underperformed and they are not on the path that we want them to be. And how do you identify that student earlier? And that was one piece in a larger essay that I wrote, and the community kind of flagged that for me as saying, like, that's one we really want to learn about. And so that's another really great driver for kind of trying to write more publicly and put my thoughts out there weekly, is I get really great insights and thoughts from folks who are all over in different contexts and thinking about math leadership in different ways.
Awesome. So if they want the Substack, is that on your website?
It's on my website, free access. Just read
Perfect.
it. Give me some comments. It's just a really fun kind of exercise for me in kind of putting my thoughts together and sharing them, but also just really fun to hear from folks on the other side too.
Perfect. And I have the Substack link, so I will make sure that's in the notes also. So it'll be even easier for you. I have Thomas's website on the screen here for those who are watching on YouTube, but yeah, we'll make sure everything's there for folks to make it as easy as possible, because I know a lot of people will find value in that. So talking about value, Thomas, I do this with all my guests. So I love that they're listening. Hopefully they're taking notes on this podcast and going to implement hopefully later down when the school year begins. But as far as their leadership journey, what is something that you would recommend they do tomorrow or next week to enhance their leadership journey?
Great. My headline, I love that you asked this, because it's really important to translate conversation into action.
Yeah.
And what I would say is do the math. I mentioned it earlier, to like do the math that you're asking your teachers are asking your students to do before an observation. But summer is a great time to take the SAT, if that's the most important exam for your 11th graders, and really see what the math is that is available there. Or take the end of year exam for your 7th grade math students. Get familiar with what you're expecting your students to do, and that can really inform a lot of what's going to happen in the onboarding and training for your teachers as they come online. So just the theme of just do the math as much as possible. Give yourself an at-bat to it. Try it out. Get excited about it. Remember the joys that you had in solving certain types of problems. And the other part that's really fun is just to kind of struggle with something and try it on your own and figure it out, right? Like, we don't spend enough time in this like kind of busy world trying things on our own and trying to make sense of it. And just going back to the roots of do the math and have that be the starting point for your math leadership, I think you'll get really great insights about what you're asking your teachers are asking your students to do. And then I think it kind of shakes out the solutions for where you'll want to spend your time and energy as a leader.
For sure. It changed your perspective. There were plenty of times where we actually would print out a random student schedule and we'd actually be a student for a day. We would actually go and follow that schedule. And the perspective that you got afterwards in all of those different classes, it changed everything. We made so many decisions afterwards based on the fact that we just walked the halls. We were in the cafeteria. We were in all the different classes. Like, now we have a student perspective versus a overarching leadership perspective. And the same thing with math. I mean, to your point, you just need to have a low risk cannonball in, try it out, and it's going to be amazing what you see in that experience.
Yeah, I love that. Cannonball in, right? Cannonball in and do the math. That's
just do the math. Just jump on in. My kids are at the pool, so I think I have that on the mind of them jumping in the cold water on a hot day. So, Thomas, it's been so great talking with you. I know we've been corresponding online for a while now, and I had a wonderful time reading your book. I really highly recommend this for all my leaders. So I want you to jump on. It's on Amazon. You can grab it immediately and have this resource available, but also just connect with Thomas. And so with that, how will they be able to find more content that you create, or even just, if they have a question or they want a resource from you, how can they reach out?
Yeah, fantastic. My website is here, thomasobrien.xyz. that's a great way to just see all the different things that I'm putting out there and the ideas that I'm sharing. But you can always find me on LinkedIn is where I'm most present. And I would love to get messages and engage and hop on the phone and connect. I love to talk with leaders and especially those who are eager to assert their leadership in math classes.
Oh, for sure. You can hear the passion in your voice when you talk about math. So Thomas, with that, I just want to thank you so much for your expertise, your wisdom, and then of course, what you're pouring out into specifically in the math world and changing the stigma that exists. And I just love your work. So excited for how this book is going to ripple through the world of education, and just so honored that you're on the show with me.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to continue this leadership journey alongside you.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.